Good morning, you guys. It is worse than breaking news. What we're facing now is the same news that's utterly depraved and corrupt that hardly even makes headlines. And today, I want my focus to be for you on the reality that under our current kleptocratic authoritarian regime, there are absolutely two justice systems. We've heard about Donald Trump weaponizing the justice system to go after his enemies, but less attention is paid to Donald Trump using the justice system to extract value from his friends. And what I mean when I talk about extracting value from his friends is anyone and everyone who is rich and famous, you got to be both, or super wealthy and well connected, does not have to follow the law anymore so long as they pay tribute to Donald Trump. Now, right now, that form of tribute is largely coming from a series of highly suspect pardons. And I'm calling them highly suspect for the reasons we will discuss. Into the future, however, I believe that people who have all of the elite credentials, if caught, won't even have charges necessarily brought against them if there is a way that they can, pony up either a little money or a little bending or a lot of bending the knee. And so what I want to share with you first is the story of these reality television stars who Donald Trump pardoned. I was not a fan or even knew about this television program they had. And hey, Julia, I'm not going to forget about your shout out, but please, I'm going to have to not let you pay me, sweetheart. I'm going to shout out to you, and there's no fee for me giving shout out. So I'm going to have to go back in the back end and erase that. But thank you, sweetheart, for doing that. We have a wonderful fan here named Julia, and I absolutely adore her. And so I'm going to cut into the show because I want to tell you that she just graduated from George Mason University. And I wanted to take this moment to thank and congratulate everyone from the class of 2025, whether that is my friend Julia Cooper or other folks who watch the show, high school, college, graduate school, and so on. So congratulations to you. And these shout outs are not paid for, but thank you for the support, Julia. But remember, I will shout out something good about you or your tortoise or anything else that's important in your life. That's the kind of community that we are. But let's go back to the real quid pro quo, which is what's going on in Donald Trump's world. So let's talk about these reality TV stars. They were indicted, tried, convicted. This is a husband and wife, the Cressleys, by a jury and sentenced each to lengthy prison stints. And while they were in prison, Donald Trump just yesterday announced that they would be pardoned. Is it any coincidence that their daughter spoke at the 2024 Republican National Convention or just made an appearance on Fox News talking about her poor parents being locked up? So let's take a look at the news when they actually were convicted. What did these people do?
TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley will serve lengthy prison terms for their fraud convictions. A federal judge in Atlanta sentenced Todd Chrisley to 12 years in prison yesterday, while his wife Julie got 7 years behind bars. The judge sentenced their accountant to 3 years in prison. The couple, known for their show Chrisley Knows Best, were found guilty earlier this year of defrauding banks and the IRS out of millions of dollars, all to fund a lavish lifestyle.
Okay, fraud. So bank fraud, tax fraud. Does it sound familiar? I want to draw a contrast here. Here, these folks got all the process that was due to them, were convicted, were sentenced, but they had this family member begging them, begging Donald Trump, and who knows what's happening behind the scenes. But she spoke out again at the Republican National Convention, talked about what she thought. So let me just tell you, you may say, well, so what? You know, maybe he just wanted to pardon them. What she has been saying when she's been making the rounds, their daughter, Todd and Julie Cressley's daughter, have been saying of her parents that they were political prosecutions, that the only reason why they were charged, she claims, is that they were Biden supporters. This couldn't be further from the truth. I'm trying to really, I mean, they're saying, well, this judge that sentenced them was, a Democrat or something. I'm just trying to understand the timeline on this, because the Cressleys, if you look at Todd and Julie Cressley, they were sentenced, okay, that was in November of 2022, okay, and they were convicted in 2022. But what were they? I mean, and these were 12 counts. They had been indicted on 12 counts in 2019, right? And in their sentence, they're convicted in 2022. So he's trying to claim that if they were charged in 2019 with these crimes, somehow this is a political prosecution. And I just want you to try to remember a little bit of reality about who was president in 2019. Do you remember that it was Donald Trump? So, and this jury that they had, if there are biases in the jury, those are supposed to be ferreted out through the jury selection process. So this is one example, but there is more. Let me give you another one. We just had the pardon of this guy named Paul Walzak. Okay, who is this guy, Paul Walzak? I didn't know about him until yesterday when he was pardoned. Another tax cheat. How did he get pardoned? I don't know, but he came to Donald Trump's attention after his mother attended a $1 million dinner in support of Donald Trump. In addition, this dude's mommy, also helped fund a plot to publicize Ashley Biden's diary. Look at that. This is the good old, what can you do for us? There's no better way to get the president's attention than this. And let me just tell you, when I teach white collar crime, I tell my students, your job as an advocate, if you're on the, if you're on the defense side, or your job as a prosecutor is to, as a prosecutor, obviously your job is to, within the prosecution guidelines, within the ethical boundaries, to apply the facts to the law, make charges if they're warranted, and bring the case to trial or to a settlement as you see fit, right? You're supposed to follow the law. On the side of the defense, of course, following the law makes sense. But if you're a defense counsel, you don't have to try the case, right? Your goal is to get the best resolution possible for your client. And if litigating the case, defending, this is a question I ask. If you were the lawyer for Paul Walzak, or you were the defense counsel for the Cressleys, let's use somebody, these folks have already been sentenced in prison. Let's say you have a client right now who is charged, been indicted. And you have a choice as your client. Now, you can never tell your client to engage in bribery, right? That's obviously true. But if your client were going to pay you millions of dollars to go through the defense process, millions of dollars to go through the trial, to go through the appeal, to go through the, as much as they could. And in this whole process, they had a good chance of being imprisoned. But you could also note and mention to your client, do you know that if you look at what happened with people like the Cressleys or Paul Walzak, one thing that could also be helpful is if someone got on television and said that this was a Democratic smear and that your parents were avid Trump supporters and you praised the president up and down, or if you decided to buy a bunch of crypto from him, I wonder if that would assist. And I think as a defense counsel, you could say if any of this is quid pro quo, that could be a federal crime of bribery. And however, if it's just paying for access and because you just love this president, that's not chargeable. And as a defense lawyer, I am sorry to tell you, for you folks who want to believe that that's wrong, that would be absolutely in your client's best interest because we have two legal systems. So I would say that if you're out there, lawyers have to tell people don't commit crimes and you can't facilitate a crime. And if you think your client's going to commit a crime, you have to not represent them. However, if your client has already committed a crime, you are allowed to represent them. And depending upon your philosophy, you can tell them, I don't want to know the details of what you did, but other philosophies are, you want to know everything. But if you have a client who has already committed a crime, you might tell them that it turns out, in terms of predictability, that being a Trump supporter will help you. Whereas if you are a Biden supporter, good luck. And again, that is the reality. And as a lawyer, I believe it's your obligation to tell your clients the absolute truth. And that is the world in which we are operating. And let me tell you how weird this process is. I'm going to share with you someone who resigned from being a pardon attorney at the Department of Justice, because I think you've seen her make the television rounds. She's resigned because she was pressured in certain ways, and she did not want to follow the pressure points in her role to do, I would call them politically motivated pardons on behalf of the Trump administration. Let's hear her tell you how pardons are supposed to work. These are norms, because certain norms were good. I wouldn't want to, if I were president and I had a pardon power, or if I were a governor and I had pardon power beyond a pardon commission, I would not want to have it all in my hands. I would want to be able to tell friends and neighbors and family, it's not up to me. I have put a system in place and there are lots of people in line and you need to follow the same process everybody else does. So let me tell you what the process is supposed to be by sharing with you this pardon attorney's view.
It is extremely unusual that someone who has not yet started serving their sentence, let alone completed their sentence, would even be considered for a pardon.
Now, who she's talking about is someone we mentioned yesterday, not Paul Walzek, not the Cressleys. But remember yesterday, we talked about this sheriff. So I'm going to remind you of this. This is Sheriff Scott Jenkins. This was the person he claimed was only prosecuted because of the radical left. But we know, in fact, the story of Scott Jenkins, that he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for accepting $75,000 in bribes in exchange for letting people become an auxiliary deputy sheriff without any training. Okay, we talked about that. So that's who she's talking about. It's unusual to pardon someone even before they begin serving their sentence. Let's continue.
Pardons are also usually reserved for people who have expressed acceptance of responsibility and remorse for their offense, which this sheriff has not done. They're usually reserved for people who have exhausted the judicial process, so concluded all their appeals, which the sheriff has not done. And finally, pardons are very, very rarely, if ever, granted to people who have abused the public trust in the way that this sheriff did.
Okay, so there's supposed to be a process. There is supposed to be an idea of pardoning, and also thinking that the pardons aren't supposed to be handed out like gifts as sort of patronage at all. They're not supposed to be quid pro quo. And by the way, good luck, even if they were ever getting an indictment, because one of the core presidential powers is the pardon power, and the Supreme Court had made that absolutely clear in their immunity decision. And clemency clemency grants, where a sentence is commuted, clemency where there is a pardon, two different things, right? You can commute someone's sentence so they still have the felony on their record, but they can come home, and then you can do a full pardon. Here we were talking about full pardons. And so yes, pardons are for sale, even if that is not seen in the public eye. There's no question in my mind. Now, let's move on to, we just did money and law and power at that intersection. I want to now talk to you a little more about this Harvard hatred and this hatred of higher educational institutions, something that has been the project of most authoritarian regimes, whether we're talking about Chairman Mao, or we're talking about Adolf Hitler, or we're talking about any other kind of purging. Right now in Russia, where scientists in the elite, in the educational fields leave. It's terrible for that to happen to a country. Hello, America. It's terrible for everyone other than authoritarian leaders who want to bang on the table and say that they are king and the smartest ever. And I will tell you that as part of this, mixed into just the hatred of higher education, is the amount of hatred directed at people who are gender nonconformists, who are not heterosexual in their identities either. And so, as you know, when Doge or whoever used AI to go through grants and funding, if there were keywords they didn't like, this could be funding, for example, to educational institutions that do research. If they saw the word trans in anything, things got booted out. Okay, that's how much they hate people who want to be transgender, who are transgender, I should say, and want to be able to publicly express who they are. Right? Okay. What's amazing to me, let me just go on to this thing. What this country, who is these leaders who aren't afraid of the spread of actual disease, treat gender identity like it's a disease. And if you let people who are trans express themselves, they think it's going to be contagious like a disease, and that would be a bad thing. I think people expressing who they are, if it is contagious, good. It's just like people who were left-handed years ago who were forced to use their right hands to write. That happened to my mother. And then in the 60s and 70s, when they stopped doing that, it jumped up how many people were left-handed. Everyone thought, oh my God, what's going on here? It wasn't that more people were left-handed. It was that it stayed steady since then. It became that if you don't repress people's actual inclinations, then that number is going to spike at first and then level out. And even if it doesn't, what does that say about a repressive society? That the numbers go up, that shows that you are repressing people's real identities. Okay, so in terms of bigotry, let's hear about the dumbest thing. There's really important scientific research being banned because this bigoted administration thinks it's related to transgender issues. Let's play this. And I'm going to, hopefully this is loud enough. If not, I'll do my best to turn it up.
What I can tell you is the kinds of grants that they're cutting gives me the sense that it's not very well thought out. We saw the kinds of grants that got cut even before this last round where they went after Harvard. There had been 1,500 or more grants that had been cut already. And I know you wanted me to look into this, so I just looked through some of our amazing grants that have been cut. And one of them was looking at how we hear in the inner ear, and that there are these neurotransmitters, and those transmitters help us hear for our whole lives. Well, it's actually possible that the reason that got flagged early on is the word neurotransmitter, because it has the word trans in it.
Oh my God. Neurotransmitter. Neurotransmitters in the brain are related somehow to how we hear. And these morons want to ban that research because transmitter. I mean, the stupid, it more than burns. I am speechless. We're in a situation where not just the stupidest, it's like an administration where okay, let me go back. When you were in high school and the if there were mean people who also happen to be popular, who also happen to be mean girls or sadistic animal torturing boys, it's like those people got together and formed a government. That's what we're talking about. The ones who would be, not just kicked out of school, but kicked out of a series of schools, and mommy and daddy had to spend money to either put them in military school, oh my God, like Donald Trump, or I don't know what they had to fucking do. But that is who is running this country. And I don't love that. And this is one of these moments where and I often feel this, as much as we criticize the private sector, I personally have worked in the private sector for a long time. Do I think businesses need to be reined in so they don't just focus solely on shareholder wealth maximization? Of course. But in my experience, when I look at the world, businesses sure as hell operate in a more egalitarian, merit-oriented, fair, and humane way than what I am seeing now or ever in government, although there are exceptions. There are amazing government workers, and public servants and members of Congress and so on. But hell, right now at the whole Trump administration and pretty much all of the elected Republicans, with a sprinkling of a few, the exceptions that prove the rule, these people are really sadistic and awful. And so on that note, though, I want to say something positive. What is the alternative if I just complain? Well, I'm really excited in my state of Michigan that Mallory McMorrow, who is a state senator right now, is running for U.S. Senate. Or she's in the state legislature. She's running for U.S. Senate for a seat that has been relinquished because Gary Peters is retiring. And I want you to hear, we've played her before. I just adore her. And full disclosure, I have contributed to her campaign. I want her to win. So what? Now you know. Okay, let's go.
Let's check in. By only a 1-vote margin, congressional Republicans pushed through what Donald Trump is calling his
one great big beautiful bill.
A big beautiful bill that is going to devastate Medicaid. We know that. Here in Michigan, half of all kids in the state rely on Medicaid. And with the cuts that are proposed in this legislation, it could lead to not only all of these kids being impacted. It doesn't just impact those who are directly on Medicaid. There are rural hospitals that might have to close their doors because they rely so heavily on Medicaid. Birthing centers may be impacted because they rely so heavily on Medicaid. And if you have your mom or your grandma in a senior center, a nursing home, that may have to close its doors or seriously reduce its staff or its hours because so many of these facilities rely on Medicaid. Now, that has gotten the bulk of the coverage, but there's a lot more in this bill that you may not be aware of. So today, let's go through some of the hidden provisions that make this big, beautiful bill a big, bad disaster.
Okay, now you want to hear that? I'm giving you a spoiler alert. I've talked to you about the many things in there. Charles Gava has, but we're putting McMorrow on hold. And I am going to do my damnedest to get her to appear on our show. So let's hold out. I'm in connection with her campaign, and I'm going to ask them. I haven't asked yet. I'm trying to set up a phone call where we can get her on here talking about everything that she can do for the U.S. Senate and the state of Michigan. Now, two more things before Crazy Town. First, remember yesterday when we were talking about Donald Trump and we were wondering about, is he really pushing back with Vladimir Putin, or is that just a game? Well, sometime yesterday, it seemed like it was, ha, ha, ha. No one really takes this all that seriously. And it's, Putin knows he has to say that. But all of a sudden, things changed. Like earlier in the day, there's a reporter named Julia Davis. And earlier in the day, she said, that Russia had, there was someone in the Duma, the Russian parliament, that had said Russia has to kiss up to Trump to keep getting its way, which is why Putin was allowing Donald to say what he was saying. But now we have, and this is, I'm going to share this with you. this is Julia Davis. Let me share this because you should follow her on Blue Sky because she actually speaks Russian and gets clips from Russian television. So let's show you this. Let's go to Julia Davis on Blue Sky. I think you can see this. I'm going to blow it up. So here's Julia Davis. She said, and let me give you, here's her profile. She's a columnist at the Daily Beast. You can see her header says Russian Media Monitor. And this is a website she had created. I watched Russian state TV, so you don't have to. And here she says, meanwhile in Russia, the new set of instructions must be in. And state TV host Vladimir Solovyov follows Dmitry Medvedev's lead by threatening Trump in response to his commentary directed at Putin. I'm going to play this, guys. Oops, did that work? I'm sorry, that didn't. I'm going to try playing that again. Let's see if I can get this to play.
Трамп раз за разом пишет, зачем, я не знаю. Но ясно, что он находится в каком-то этом информационном пузыре, не задает элементарных вопросов. Ну, что он пишет? Что Владимир Путин не понимает, так это то, что если бы не я, с Россией уже случилось бы очень много плохих вещей. Я имею в виду действительно плохие. Он играет с огнем. При всем уважении к Дональду Трампу, мне кажется, что это Дональд Трамп не понимает. Ни России, ни Верховного Главнокомандующего. Мы изначально готовились к войне с НАТО. Поэтому, когда идут фразы о том, что можем сделать что-то плохое, я напомню, мы можем уничтожить весь мир несколько раз. Я напомню ему слова Верховного Главнокомандующего. А зачем такой мир, в котором нет России? Поэтому ни у кого не должно быть никаких иллюзий. Никакого смирения не будет. Не будет. А угрожать...
Okay, guys. So if you're listening to that Russian and you're not watching the camera, you're going to have to rewind in a minute. What he was saying is direct threats to Donald Trump, saying we've always been preparing for an attack on NATO, and also saying basically we could blow up the world. Now, I know that's a lot of, kind of chest pounding and the like, but I find it interesting. This is obviously Putin sending a message back to Donald Trump to shut the fuck up. And we will see how this plays out. I, for one, am not interested in nuclear war. And I am, for one, not interested in seeing these men in their whatever fisticuffs pissing match. But keep your eye on Julia Davis's, on her feed. And I will keep you updated should anything significant happen on that front. Now, one last thing before Crazy Town, and you guys, I've got a really good Crazy Town, is Scott Pelley from 60 Minutes. You might remember that we had him, we had a clip of him the other day when his boss at 60 Minutes had resigned. And he paid tribute to that boss. And in addition to that, he talked about on that show the importance of freedom of the press, either in a direct or a implicit way. And yesterday, this weekend, he spoke at Wake Forest. It could have been 2 days ago. I don't have the exact date, but I do have a clip from the speech he gave. And I want to share that with you now because it is so much better than the graduation message about being on your third trophy wife or second trophy wife or second yacht or whatever the hell Donald Trump was talking about. So this is a commencement speech for the ages.
This moment, this morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack, and insidious fear is reaching through our schools, our businesses, our homes, and into our private thoughts. The fear to speak in America. Power can rewrite history with grotesque, false narratives. They can make criminals heroes and heroes criminals. Power can change the definition of the words we use to describe reality. Diversity is now described as illegal. Equity is to be shunned. Inclusion is a dirty word. This is an old playbook, my friends. There's nothing new in this.
Woo. It's there. People are talking about where we are. And this is from, it was yesterday, I believe, at Wake Forest. Good for Scott Pelley. And especially glad that he is doing this, despite the fact that CBS is trying to curry favor from the Trump administration so they can get through this merger to supposedly save the network or what have you. So I think people are waking up. I don't know. I hope that change happens before it's too late. But we will muddle through. I will keep speaking truth to power and showing you Crazy Town through what is coming, because it doesn't get better until this administration is gone. It just doesn't. But we can grow together. We can support our physical, relational, intellectual, spiritual, and mental health. Yes, PRISM. That is always important to us. But now we need Crazy Town, you guys. I'm so excited about this. This is a non-political Crazy Town. It is fabulous. I may have to play it twice because it's so unbelievable. Let's go. Okay. Okay, set up for this. This appears to be at an airport, and I don't know what country it's in, but I can tell that the passenger who's trying to board the plane appears to be speaking either in Spanish or Portuguese. I'm not sure what language the flight attendant or the attendant, the airport employee is speaking in. But you can see this is something, sometimes when you board a plane, you're only allowed to have 2 carry-ons. So you've got to take your little handbag and put it in your backpack. If you also have a suitcase, speaking about myself, or there are other people who might be boarding with kittens. That happened to me on a plane, deathly allergic to cats. And the guy with the little kittens was going to sit next to me, right? Stuff happens. But at the gate, usually you have these conversations. Well, this lady is having a conversation because it looks like she has a support animal that she's going to bring on the plane. And the thing is, I think you're not going to expect what support animal this is. And no, it's not Tank the tortoise. But let's do it, you guys. Just, oh my God. You guys, I can't. It's so cute. Whoever's filming this woman wanted to bring on the plane her emotional support kangaroo. And I am dying. Because number one, I really, oh my gosh, we should, emotional support animals are a real thing. And I'm not mocking the situation, but I fucking know that if I had an emotional support kangaroo, I'd be so happy. Although maybe it's a little more complicated than all that. But look at the look on this kangaroo's face. And you can see how this kangaroo can give us all some emotional support. Let me play this for you again.
知咩？係啊，密足係要到大褲，我哋都係嗌頭。
That can't be real. I mean, the kangaroo's holding the ticket. Oh my God. If this is AI, this is the best application of AI. And if it's real, my friends, this made me so flippin' happy. And with that, I will see you. I'll see you tomorrow morning and bright and early at 8:30, not 1 in the morning. Sorry about that glitch.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.